In the previous videos, we have created a few different things. So we did a few different designs and styles. So we made a container on one side and an image on the other, and we put some text in one side. And we also looked then at making these images responsive. So in this little layout tutorial, we are going to make something like this, where we're going to have some buttons on one side, and we're going to have some text on the other, and we're going to have a little bit of space in the middle of it as well, so that the buttons are spaced out. So in order to do this, we have our blank containers ready set to use. So I'm going to click on the top container here, and I'm going to click on it but there as well in the DOM to make sure. I'm going to go to insert. We're going to make sure we're on Bootstrap components, and then we're going to click on this here, grid row with column. Now we're going to nest it, and then we're going to make sure there are only 2 columns to add. And then once we've done that, I'm going to click on OK. Now what this does is it has added in a new row here for me with 2 columns, which is lovely. Now we are going to get rid of the text that's in this because we don't need it, and I'm going to get rid of the text that's over here. And what we're going to do is we're going to change the size of this, because this is going to be just holding a button, so it doesn't need to be too big. So I'm just going to move this over like so, and you can see this one now is going to be moved in from the end. So let's just pull that out a little bit. Now I want to make sure that I have a space between the button and the text. So when I've selected the right hand side container, I'm going to just move the offset over a little bit, and that'll be enough. And I'm just going to then resize it so it goes full like so. Now if you look at that, you'll see that there's obviously a little bit of a grey thatch area here. This means that there'll be a space and nothing will be used. Now we can obviously get rid of that later if we need to, just by moving it back in, but if not, obviously that's absolutely fine as it is there. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we need to replicate this for the other containers. So underneath, if I just click on some of the other containers, so I'm back in the body here. If I click on that container, that's what we've got there. If I click on the other container there and there, we have got that set up, ready, set to go. Now, what you'll notice is I have made a little mistake there. So there's the container is a bit big. There's a almost like a paragraph or something in here. So I've just removed that just by highlighting it and pressing the backspace. Now, if I needed to, I can right click on this row. Notice where I've clicked now, because I'm not clicking anywhere in the main part. So what I've done is I've clicked underneath the container. I've clicked on the row. So I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to go here, and I'm going to right click, and we're going to paste as child. That puts then that in right in there. So I have another column ready, set to go. I'm going to do the same here, paste as child. As you can see there, that has now placed that in there for me, which is nice and dandy. Everything now has come across. So what we can do now is we can start putting some buttons in. So I'm going to use the inbuilt button editor here this time. So I'm going to click on the button here, and you notice there's a drop down menu. At the moment it's on success because that's the last one I used. I'm going to use that again because I like the color green, but you can see there's some pre-made colors here which are already in there for you. We can change these, but we're not going to at the moment. We can also add new colors, but again, I'm not going to in this tutorial. We will look at doing that in a separate tutorial. So what I'm going to do is click on success, and what you'll notice is it's coming up here at the top. Where do I want it? Do I want it before, after, or nest? So I'm going to click on nest because I want it inside. So nest means put inside. Now you can see here it's got success button. We're going to do that again. So I'm going to click on this here, and we're going to click then just on the success button again. We're going to nest it, and we're going to do one more here, and I'm going to nest it then again. Now, if I just preview this really quickly, let me click on the preview button at the bottom and go to Safari. Let's save it. This is what it has done so far. So you can see there are basically the buttons that we've made, and there's nothing then to the side. So let's put a little bit of text on here. Series kicked in for some reason. Okay, so what we're going to do, I'm going to put some just padding text in here at the moment. I'm using my lorem generator, or lorem ipsum generator, whatever it's called. So let's just put some text in here for each one of these. Now you will notice there's a space between each one of these. It's basically I've pressed the enter key by accident. So it's basically put a space in, which isn't actually a bad thing. When we come to the live view again, it separates it out quite nicely. Now what we're going to do is on this one, I'm going to copy this whole container and we're going to paste it again. So I've got another one, and this is the beauty of using this. We can copy whole chunks. So let's paste it again, and you can see now I've got 5 different buttons. Now there is something to note with the buttons. When I change the name of them, now notice this has success space button. If we say this is asset or development log, now I can assure you I did press the space button, but the space button does not seem to put a space in here. So the way around this is when you name a button, if you want to put a space between the words, just click the split view at the top here, and then just make sure you put the space in the code, and you can see then it comes through like that, no problem at all. Now, there is a slight issue with this. So you can see we got development log. Let's change this one to asset log. And we're going to change this to game. And then we're going to change this one to analysis. And we're going to change this one to spreadsheet. Now, the problem we've got is Dreamweaver will basically make your buttons, and they do look lovely. But the problem we've got is all of the buttons are different widths. And if I just go and preview this again, this is evident in the preview. You can see they're all there on the left. And if we make this smaller, they are all like so. Now what I want to do is I want to change this so that they are basically a little bit bigger. Now, what we're going to do is this. I am going to click on the button, and we're going to add in a class or an ID or property, I like to call these. And what we're going to do is we're going to say .w for width, and I'm going to say 75. Let's see what that does. So what 75 is doing is it's saying make it sort of 75% of the container width. Now you can play around with this as much as you want. So let's say for argument's sake, I make these a little bit smaller. And I'm going to move this one, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. You can see now that's allowed the button to increase. Now if we do this for all of them, W75, click on that, click on the plus, .w-75, and we do this for this one, .w-75, we do it for this one, and we do one more, what that does is it basically makes them all 75% of the actual container. Now when we preview it, let's preview in one of our browsers. So now when we do it, look, they're all exactly the same, which is lovely. And it's basically a really nice way of constraining and making sure that the size is good. And when we resize it, you'll notice then the button isn't the full width. Now, one thing you will notice is if we are constraining it to 75%, then we've now got a really big gap, and we don't actually need that gap anymore because we've got a gap naturally now here. So if you wanted to, you can just remove this. In fact, I'm going to remove one of them to show you how it's going to look, because you may actually like the big gap here. So let's go and preview this again. So that's now how it looks with a 75% gap. So almost we've got a 50% gap there if you think of it in terms of percentage from this container size. Now, obviously, it depends on what you want. This is just some text there to show you and give you an example. You may say, yeah, I really like that because I got a little gap. Or you may say, no, I want a really big gap. That's fine. Now, one thing you can also do is center these buttons. Now, what some people do is they click on the side of it, then they'll go CSS, and then they'll just go center, and then they'll say, well, that's not working. Why isn't it working? Well, you've got to use a center property. Now, I made one earlier on, and I think it was called align dash, I think it was called content center. So if I add that align content center in, because I've already added that in, everything then becomes centralized. Now, if you haven't done that prior, all you do is click on the plus, dot align content, and then center. And then what I normally do is then click on the align center. Now, there is something really important. You can see I've just made that mistake. I was trying to apply this property to the button. You can't do that. You have to apply the property to the container. Okay, so to this div. Now, if you get confused, don't worry, it's easy. I've done it myself loads of times. But if you click on the button, it doesn't work. If you click on the container or click on the DOM here, then you can add it in. And that puts it in there for you. Now, I'm not going to do this for all of them, but I'm just doing it just to show you a rough sort of idea of how to do this. Now, let me just show you what that preview does. Okay, so what this has done now is it's centered these two buttons, obviously because we've told it to. We haven't applied that property to the other ones. And then when we make this smaller, it's actually aligned it really nicely there. I personally think that looks quite nice. It's a 75% width, it's centered aligned, and it does look really nice when we make the site a little bit smaller. So it is totally up to you. It's a little bit more work because you need to add in a few additional properties. When I say a few additional ones, I just mean this one, this property, align center content. And if you haven't done that already, then obviously you'll need to add it in to your design. Now this is pretty much align content center. There we go. I've messed that up, so let me just click off again. Align content center. Here we go. There we are, done. So as you can see, it takes a little bit longer, but nothing too bad at all. There is one other thing which I am going to just show you very quickly once I've done this. Dot align content center. Lovely. Now then, let's say for argument's sake, you do have more content, right? Let's say for example, if we make this smaller, and you can see now this text is wrapped around, which is fine, but the button is still the same there. What happens if you wanted the button to be deeper? Well, if you look there, we've got the width property. We can also go to .h 75, and what that will do is it'll make it 75% the height of that container as well. Okay, now obviously this is going to be up to you depending on how much text you've got next to these buttons, or depending on the design that you've gone for. But obviously it is totally your choice what you do. When you resize it, you'll notice then the container will shrink down, as does the button. Okay, so I typically don't advise you put in the height properties on. I normally try to stick to just doing the width containers, because it's just normally with everything it makes a bit more sense. So hopefully you've been able to follow that, and hopefully you'll end up with something looking nice. Obviously I've done these buttons going down the page. You could do them across, and you could do the text underneath. You could do them with some text, a little bit of an image, and then a button. It is totally your choice, entirely whatever you will need to do. And because you've used containers, if you wanted to put a color into the background of these containers, you can. So if we do bg we'll do light as an example. There we are. That now is put a light grey on here. Don't know if the screen recording software is actually picking that up now at the moment, but let's try and do it once more up here. Dash bg dash. I tell you what I'll probably do. Let's do a, I don't know what the info color is. There we are. So you can see there is a color going on there, right? So these properties that you add in do actually make a little bit of a difference. But don't forget, if you are going to use the property, apply it to the highest div that you've got within this container. Otherwise, it is not going to work. Okay, so .bg dash light. There you are, that's a grey on there, there's a grey on there. Let's see if we can preview this very quickly in Safari. There you are. Well, I can see it on my screen. It's a very light grey colour, which has been placed in here. Now, in terms of linking these buttons up, it's incredibly easy. Like we've done hyperlinks on images, all you do, click on the button itself. If you click on HTML, there's a link option here. So you can click on the browse for file, or what we've done in the past, if you click on the files here, you can drag then directly to the file you wish to link to.